One of my favourite sayings that I often send to Ericose when we're arguing stuff is pot, kettle, black. We hear that through Mike Griesbach, Andy Colburn is complaining to Netflix, is suing Netflix for spoiling his reputation. And I'll give you a couple of moments for get yourselves up off the floor from laughter. But let's look seriously at Andy Colburn in a little bit more detail. Now, when he received the phone call in '95, there's no doubt that he did pass on the information to up the food chain, because we know that Couchet and Kasurik knew about it, and of course, like they did with everybody else, they said, look, just forget it, we've got the wrong guy. And of course, during depositions, it comes out that they did know then that it was Gregory Allen and it was Stephen Avery. They knew exactly who was the persons being talked about in that phone call. And of course, it's interesting, isn't it, that they get Colburn to write a report. And in John Farrak's book, there's the suggestion that Andy Colburn was drawn into the depositions. Maybe he didn't want to, but he was drawn into them. And maybe that was a little bit of the hierarchy in Manitowoc Sheriff Department deciding, well, if we're going to throw somebody under the bus, then we might as well make it Andy Colburn. And I suspect, had things gone on further, that he would have been the one that would have suffered badly as a result. But as I say, he was drawn into the depositions. And of course, Lenk and Colburn, they both should have mentioned the conflict of interest to Bert and Ernie. Lenk says that he should have mentioned it to Bert and Ernie, and that it was, had he thought of it, he would have done. I can't help thinking that when we hear from most of those law enforcement officers, they seem to have some sort of selective memory fade. They've no idea who did depositions, when they did them. Are you kidding me? All of law enforcement, certainly in Manitowoc and neighbouring counties, would know exactly what was going on. It would have, it was in the news. There's no doubt about that. So when this conflict of interest occurred, it was the most pathetic attempt at respecting that conflict of interest. They certainly didn't observe that. These are things that spoil reputations, not the fact that making a murderer points these things out. And then, of course, during the investigation, one of my favourite lines from John's book is the term when he refers to the crackerjack Manitowoc detectives, Lenk and Colburn. They were evidence technicians, apparently. That was their title. And as I've said all along, you wonder, since when were evidence technicians trained to be so rough with a piece of furniture that, according to Colburn, he managed to bust the back off the cabinet, and then the key popped out, and decided to have a little wander around the cabinet to check out the slippers. And that was, of course, during let's be fair, it was the 7th sweep stroke search. As Robert Herman pointed out to me, rather embarrassed he was about it. He said, I know you're not going to believe me, but I know you're not going to take much interest in this, but it wasn't actually 7 full-on searches. They weren't all big, 2-3 hour long searches. Some of them were just 10-15 minute sweeps. Well, 10 or 15 minutes is more than sufficient to check out that tiny bedroom. The bedroom is tiny, not tidy. That's one thing we could never accuse Steve of, is housekeeping. Also, we're told that Andy Colburn got a bit frustrated, a bit het up because of the pornographic magazines. Again, not wishing to be too smutty about this, but girly magazines and pornographic magazines aren't quite the same. I have a chemistry professor to thank for pointing that out to me. Playboy, Mayfair, they are girly magazines. They are merely the same as, for example, if you notice in the Avery workshop, you always get that calendar, the calendars on the wall. And there's always a pretty girl on the calendars. There's really not much difference between those calendars and the magazines. Anyway, I don't want to get too hung up on that kind of stuff. The problem is, though, that there is such huge doubt over the finding of that key. And then we get the Sam William Henry phone call, and the fact that he was told where the car was. He then phones in. We hear in the background, "It's here." No, Andy Colburn, the only people that have spoilt your reputation are members of Manitowoc Sheriff Department, and yourself in particular. And I think you were promised support in running for sheriff, which failed. Interesting that Robert Herman, I didn't even know anything about it, but he pointed out to me in our very first phone conversation. He said, "I get on fine with Andy," and I said, "Well, that's good to know. Yeah, fine, okay." He said, "Even though he ran against me for sheriff." I didn't know that. Thank you, Robert. I didn't realise that. So why mention it? There must be some animosity there. You must realise, although you're not able to say anything, or you feel that you're not able to say anything, that you're a little bit cheesed off at the behaviour of Andy Colburn. Probably not what he did, but the fact that he did such a bad job of it. No, for me, the fact that him through Griesbach is filing this civil suit is because they are law enforcement in Manitowoc. They are the ones that do the threatening. They do not respond well to being threatened. I'm pretty sure that it's a case of we need to start threatening these people, see if they back off. You're used to dealing with the citizens of Manitowoc, not a huge corporation with plenty solicitors. And they're right. You, Colburn, have spoilt your own reputation. There's no other way of putting it. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. Catch you again soon. Bye for now.